Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa, science advisor Matt Moniz. Stephanie Burke's down in Tennessee, so she won't be with us tonight. But we are here with you to talk about the paranormal, as we will be pretty much each and every week now going forward, because our paranormal Christmas is over. All the fun stuff that we've been doing, it's all over. It's all done. Now we're just back in the studio, which is, you know, we enjoy that too, but it's not the same as being out there and meeting the people, which we've been doing a bunch of different stuff. I haven't even asked you, Matt, how was the Halloween event a couple weeks ago?
That was pretty action-packed. We had a lot of people show up and a lot of good guests on Skype. We're actually going to be probably looking for a slightly bigger venue next time.
Where was it this year?
It was at the Seaport Inn.
Okay, I don't know if I'm familiar with that.
I believe it's basically...
I pretty much know the Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, and that's it.
Yeah. It's right on the waterfront, but we had two separate sections, and we're looking for a place that can hold a little bit more people, and where we can put the vendors inside with the people. It's just...
Would you make them go outside?
No, there's another section that was
cold.
It wasn't that bad that
weekend. We walked. I was a couple miles away from you.
Yeah,
at the Parson Barnard house, and we walked to the cemetery that's down the street from there, and I didn't even have a jacket on, so it wasn't that bad. Not like last night was, and tonight too.
Yeah,
both very cold. I wonder how many people are here for Comic-Con, Matt Costa, that are like, "Oh, is it always this cold in New England?" Right. No, it's like usually not this cold, but it is tonight. So it's a good night to, you know, maybe build a fire in the fireplace, grab a blanket, lay on the couch, put on Spooky South Coast on your TV through YouTube. If you have a smart TV, or now even if you have a Comcast Xfinity cable box, the Comcast box now has the YouTube app as one of the apps that you can find in your menu there. If you just search your app or hit your little voice remote button and say YouTube, then you'll be able to go right to the YouTube app on your cable box, and then just search for Spooky South Coast. You will find the live Spooky South Coast video stream. And this is kind of a different setup for us, because we're going with, see, we took all this hard work that Matt Costa has done for Spooky TV over the years, and like really this has been ongoing now for like 5-6 years. He's been building this video extravaganza of a show, and we've now taken this technology and this ability and finally shared it with the rest of the station. So we have now...
Are you sure you want to do that? I've seen some of the other DJs in here.
We have what's like now a permanent rig, though. So we don't have to come in here and set up a whole bunch of stuff anymore. And so there's actually cameras here that will be set up here pretty much all the time. There's a dedicated machine over there just for the video stream. So this is the future, man. This is the future. Watching radio as it happens. And now you'll be able to do it each week. So hopefully this means, too, that if all goes well, and I don't want to curse it, but it's not like coming in here. See, people complain.
That's what people do, yeah.
Let's not pussyfoot around the situation here. If you go into the chat room on Spooky TV before the show starts, we have a great loyal following of people that love to come and watch the show every week and engage in the chat room, but some of them are complainers. Some of them are complaining, "Oh, I can't hear it. Oh, I can't see. What's going on?" Listen, we know that there's problems, and we do the best that we can around it, but it's not like the system is permanently set up every week that we just come in and press a button and go live. It takes installing cameras. It takes installing audio, and as you do that, sometimes things install right, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have them ready and they work, and then when you go live, they crap out on you. And you have to try to fix it on the fly.
Like the computer decides it wants to, install updates on.
All these things that will come into play when we're doing this stream. So the fact that, again, I don't want to bash anybody, because you're great, loyal fans of the show and great, loyal listeners, and we appreciate, and viewers, and we appreciate it. But also, like, I know I say this all the time. You're getting the show for free on a Saturday night. It's not like we're charging you any money for us to enjoy this show. So sometimes you're going to have to deal with a few little bugs and a few little issues. But anyway, the long and short of it is that with this new setup now, you shouldn't even have those bugs anymore.
You're going to jinx us.
I know that. As I'm saying it,
at the beginning.
All I can think of in my head as I say this is it's just going to crap out in the middle of me giving the speech. But this will be permanently set up, and used on a daily basis for all the different shows here at WBSM. So it won't be a matter of coming in on Saturday night, hooking things up, having something not work. It'll be constantly being fine-tuned.
It'll be turnkey.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's the plan. And by having it going and having it running, that means that we can focus in instead on doing bigger and better things with it. So just having the baseline of the video streaming of what we've already done, now we can start bringing in more and more little tweaks. And now we can start doing other things that will be unique twists. So if we want to bring in more Skype video, if we wanted to bring in more, YouTube stuff and things like that. So, we'll be able to focus on worrying about all that because the baseline stuff is covered. So this is kind of our first Spooky South Coast using this studio technology. So far, so good, Matt?
So good.
I mean, it looks great from my end. I still wish we had better lighting in the studio, but we'll work on that.
What, these fluorescent bulbs aren't good enough?
We do have some lights in there. We just never bring them in. But I'm hoping that as they build this, they'll see the value in just like hanging some lights over there. Because they have them in the FM studio.
Yeah.
So hang some LED lights over in the corner so that we can just kind of flood the room with some brighter, wider light. But I like it. I'm looking at the shot. I like it. And we're gonna the studio is gonna get a redesign. They're working on that. They're actually gonna have the table's going to be facing in a different direction here, and it's going to be more conducive to having guests and interaction and everybody on camera. And
you're just going to jinx everything.
No,
like nothing's ever going to come to fruition because
they're going to spruce all this up. They're going to move the WBSM sign. There's a TV out in the hallway that's going to go right there. It's going to hang on the wall.
Is?
Yeah, they're going to move that sign.
They're probably going to put it on
the sign's going to be over there,
okay.
And then there'll be a TV right here. And then, because I think they were talking about putting the TV over there, but I was like, that's not a good idea.
Are they getting rid of this?
With the door. I don't know what will happen with this, but we're going to take down all these photos, and we're going to have a clear view into the booth. And Frank's working on a system where the person that's in that booth can actually talk to the people on the air. So Mac,
really,
yeah, like that's what normally happens in like bigger stations. Yeah. We just don't ever have to worry about that because everybody's kind of working out of the studio. You don't have to actually have people working in an auxiliary studio, but we'll be able to do that. So when Matt has to go and get people on the line, he can go in there and do it and then talk to me in my ear and tell me that they're in there.
Wow.
Fancy stuff.
It's going to be big time stuff.
But that's the thing is like this station is built for what it's needed. And now with all of this new technology, we need to add more things.
Scary part is we were doing this before the station decided wanted to do this.
Well, they're only doing it because we suggested it. All this video stuff, we gave them the idea.
Everything is because of us.
Pretty much. We're fully taking credit for that.
Yeah.
Well, bear in mind we've been here the longest.
Pretty much. I mean, we've been here longer than all the people on WBSM.
Yeah.
Phil was here. And he was all over the place. I mean, Phil's been around forever, but we've been doing this show since before all the hosts were hosting their shows. So. And this was, I don't know, how did we come up with the idea of having to do video streaming in the first place?
I don't know.
I think you brought it up.
Because you saw it on...
Did I? I probably saw something.
I think you were like, hey, have you heard of this stick cam thing? And I think you brought it up. And then we started discussing the possibilities of it.
Maybe. And then we stumbled upon a program.
The way things...
stuck with it way longer than we should have.
Here's how things usually go with the innovations that we do on this show is either Matt will have an idea and tell me about it, or I'll have an idea and tell Matt about it. But either way, what ends up happening is just me telling Matt to make it happen. So, even if ideas are mine, please understand, none of them would actually ever come to fruition if it wasn't for Matt Costa actually executing those plans. And so that's what I've been telling everybody here at the station. Like, people have come in, oh, hey, Tim, I like that thing that you guys do with the video. I'm like, yeah, talk to Matt. Matt's the guy that does all that. He's the guy that's built all that. And he, obsesses over it and finds ways to do different things. And he blows my mind constantly with it.
I do obsess over it.
You do, but it's in a good way.
It pays, though. You do well with it.
And that's where a lot of our hang-ups come from as well. Is when I screw around with something and I'm like,
yeah, and you're trying
and
to
I'm
innovate.
like, you know what? I shouldn't have done that.
Like
I shouldn't have tried that before the show. I should have tried it after the show.
Like he mentioned to me the other day, not to give away anything that we might be doing here in the future, but he mentioned to me the other day, I think it's possible that when we're doing these camera feeds into this, that we can use your cell phone camera anywhere in the building as long as you're on the network. And my head just went, what do you mean? You mean I can go be across the building and still be? He's like, yeah, I think it'll work. And so he's in here the other night, like actually testing it and making it happen and making it work. See, because I can never leave here. Like if I want to get up and in the middle of the show, I can't.
Sometimes emergencies arise, especially after eating Sonic.
Well, that's basically what's going to happen is if you can make this work, there will be a show where I host it from the bathroom.
Might as well.
Yeah, because I can. Because, I'll be able to. So I will actually do it. I'll actually go into the men's room, maybe the ladies' room because it looks better visually. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll go in there and I'll host the show from the bathroom the entire time. And that way there, when I'm talking to myself in the bathroom, it will actually make sense for once. Mm-hmm. Instead of the usual way. So in just a few moments, we're actually going to class up the show. Instead of talking about talking in the bathroom and all that stuff, we're going to be joined by our guest, Jeffery Kripal, who's going to be joining us to talk about some of his work. Jeffrey's a very interesting guy. He has a very interesting background. He actually is part of the Department of Religion at Rice University. He heads up that department. We're going to be talking to him about about a number of his works, but the latest one being The Supernatural, A New Vision of the Unexplained, which he co-wrote with the legendary Whitley Strieber, who we've had here on the program in the past. And we're going to talk about this with him because this is a book where they're taking a completely new approach and a completely new look at the paranormal. And we've kind of languished in a lot of the same stuff over the last... We've been doing this show now, it'll be 12 years. In January. So, there's been a lot of hang-ups and sometimes I say, oh, I'm tired of hearing things explained that way. I'm tired of hearing people say, well, we know this to be true, because we don't know any of it to be true. Kind of everything that we are saying, we're taking in good faith based on experience. I mean, last week we were out in the field at an event, at our Mysterious Middleborough event. And when things start to go on, people are looking for their devices, and they're like, well, I don't know why this is happening because I'm not getting anything on the K2 meter. Well, because you probably don't have to get something. Just because we think that if there's a ghost this happens, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen every time, because there's plenty of times when we experience things that stuff doesn't go off, and there's plenty of time when stuff goes off that we don't experience anything. So I think that we take too much stuff at face value and don't really step back and realize, wait a minute, we don't really know anything about this. So if you have something that's right 70% of the time, it seems to be true. If 70% of the time something manifests and you can quantify it with, EMF fluctuation or temperature fluctuation, sure. But that doesn't mean that the other 30% of times that people are experiencing something that doesn't happen, that they're not experiencing something.
Correct.
I mean, I was sitting in the dark in the basement of the Oliver house with no lights on, no devices, anything, and just seeing ridiculous shadow figures, feeling people touching us, cold breezes blowing directly in our face, all these different things that happen that even if the devices were on, who knows if it would have even picked up any of that stuff. So we'll get into all that in just a moment with Jeffery Kripal. I'm going to try and bring him up here because I'm the kind of guy that I like to live by the seat of my pants and not take a break. And just try and do everything on the air. Hello, Jeffrey. It's Tim from Spooky South Coast. How are you? Can you hear us okay? Hold on. Let me make sure I get everything in. What do I got to do? Put it in audition, right? Can you hear us now, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I can hear you really well. I assume you don't want video.
No, normally we would, but we didn't have time to set it up, so we just got back from a Comic-Con, and I happen to notice that one of your work has to do with superheroes.
Yeah, it does.
I can tell you that some of the ones that we saw today, they might have been heroes, but they weren't so super. Sometimes I look at the costumes and I say, that's a bold choice. So
yeah, that's what makes the convention so much fun, though.
Oh, absolutely. And some of the work that people put into their costumes are just it's amazing to see, and the themes that they come up with. It's not just dressing up like somebody; it's getting all your friends together and coming up with a theme.
Yeah.
We saw an entire group of kids dressed as Toy Story characters, to the point where the guy who was the army man even had like the little base for his legs, which was pretty neat. Well, why don't I'm going to give everybody your bio real quick. Jeffery Kripal holds the J. Newton Razor Chair in Philosophy and Religious Thought at Rice University, where he's also the chair of the Department of Religious Studies. He's the author of Authors of the Impossible, The Paranormal and the Sacred, as well as a number of other books as well. And of course, as we mentioned, the latest book is The Supernatural, A New Vision of the Unexplained, that he co-wrote with Whitley Strieber. And I got to tell you, Jeffrey, right off the bat, how does that work? How does a working relationship, writing a book with Whitley Strieber, work? Because we've had him on the show before, and how do you kind of take what it is that you do and compare it with his mind? Because his mind goes to all different kinds of places.
Well, that book is the result of a long sort of back history. I wrote a book in 2011 called Mutants and Mystics, which was on the paranormal in science fiction and superhero comics. And the last chapter is all about Whitley. And so when I was writing that chapter, I contacted him through a mutual friend and shared the chapter with him to try to get his sense of it, whether I had him accurate or not. And that sparked, a lot of correspondence and ultimately a friendship, and in the long term, ultimately this book. My own sense of Whitley is that he has all kinds of very sophisticated theories of religion and the paranormal kind of embedded or implicit in his books. And so what we tried to do in The Supernatural was pull those out and make them more explicit.
He certainly is an outside-of-the-box thinker in all different kinds of approaches, and it seems like you are as well. Just taking a look at some of the works that you have, I think we were talking before about taking anything at face value, and that a lot of folks are kind of taking things for granted in the paranormal now, to say that we know that if this happens and this happens and this must be true, when in actuality we don't really have any true definitions of any of it.
Right. We can talk all night about that, but I actually don't believe any of it. But that doesn't mean I don't think it's real or I don't think it's happening. It just means I don't find the mythical or religious or pop cultural frameworks in which people interpret it to be persuasive. So I think we need a great deal of suspicion, but we also need a great deal of sympathy at the same time.
Well, one of the things that I've felt over the years, and as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing this show now it'll be 12 years this January, and is that right, or is it 12? Yeah, 12 years. I got to do the math in my head because it's been so long. But one of the things that we've realized is that people get complacent in their thinking, and this is a field of study where we should never be complacent, because things are ever evolving, and our understanding of these things that we're pursuing are ever evolving. So I don't understand why some people just kind of flatline and plateau at a point where they say, okay, I think I have an idea of what's going on, and now I'm just going to go out and lecture about this and write books about this and try to go out and have other people experience this, when in actuality, there's always, for every answer that you think you have, there's more questions that open up.
Right. The situation is even deeper than that. I mean, my own view, and I think Whitley's view as well, is that the paranormal is all about the gaps or the fissures in our worldview, in our categories, and it's all about confusing us. And if you think you understand the paranormal, you clearly don't, because it's about us abandoning our understanding or our categories.
See, I don't think it's a mistake that in the title of the book that the supernatural is not all one word with a small n. It's two separate words for a reason.
Right. That's the key point of the whole book. And of course, when you just say the title, people lose that. They think it's one word, supernatural, but it's actually two words. Yeah, I mean, the main argument of the book is that what people think of the paranormal or the strange or the supernatural is actually natural. It's part of our world. These things happen all the time. We do not have a scientific explanation for them. That does not mean they're not real. It simply means we're not there. Um, and that we live in a world in which these things are perfectly natural. So we're trying to make that argument in the book, essentially.
I mean, it makes sense because there's a lot of things in the natural world that we don't fully understand as it is. I mean, we're finding, especially getting into microbiology and microphysics, we're finding more and more things that are new information that we never would have thought of 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And even just discovering new species on the planet from time to time as well. Like, we haven't mastered everything in what we think is the known universe. So why can we say that this is something that's supposed to be the unknown?
Well, and what I was trying to articulate is that actually for all of our science, we have only mastered the objective world. All of science is really just about objects in space. It eliminates subjectivity or consciousness to do its work, but we are conscious. We are forms of subjectivity, and all paranormal experiences engage those forms of consciousness. So they actually cannot be explained with the scientific method. They need other forms of knowing and other methods to even appear. And that was one of the sort of major critiques I was trying to issue in the book, is that we naively think that science will eventually explain everything, but it can't, because it eliminates consciousness to do its work. And again, the paranormal is all about consciousness. So that's essentially my critique in the book.
I mean, and that's, no pun intended, but I think spooky action at a distance comes into play when you're talking about things involved in the paranormal. That, it's like you said, it has to be subjective. It has to be experienced for it to happen. I don't think that, and people always make this argument with me, well, what about all these surveillance camera footage where we see things moving around? But the point is, somebody was observing through that surveillance camera. The act of observation was there, and I think that that's the case. I don't think that this stuff happens in a vacuum. I think it needs to have the human element for it to take place.
That's right. That's exactly right. And, of course, there are physical traces, and there are physical dimensions to these experiences, but they only make sense in relationship to human actors and human observers.
And I think part of that, at least the way that I've been looking at it for a while now, is that part of that is, like you said, it's not just an objective, hard scientific thing. I think a lot of it is emotional, and it's you can't quantify emotion, and so you can't quantify this stuff the same way you can't quantify love or fear or hate.
That's right. I mean, to take a simple example, the near-death experience. I mean, you don't get a near-death experience unless you have trauma. You have extreme emotion. You have extreme crisis. You often have a loved one that's in danger or dying. And all of that emotional energy, all of that love, all of that crisis is what catalyzes the near-death experience. And if you don't have those things, you've got no experience. You've got no event to study. And you can't get that in a scientific laboratory. It's not going to work.
And
so that's a difficult thing for people to hear, because I think many of us in the modern world think that science is the only way of knowing anything, and that if we can't establish something with the scientific method, it doesn't exist. But that's extremely naive and obviously false. And so I think we need to really, really query that assumption.
Well, my co-host here, Matt Moniz, is a scientist, and Matt, you seem to be having a reaction there. What exactly is?
Well, I find it funny because he is right. Science is only going to get you so far, especially looking at the paranormal. I mean, in science, you can set up all of these parameters. You can build the box, so to speak. But what happens in the box, we can only quantify up to a certain point. He's right. Once you start getting into the imposition of consciousness into it. My consciousness is different than yours, and
Right.
Your interpretation. You can break it down into certain mathematical principles, but that only works so far.
And what's funny, Jeff, is Moniz has been doing this for a long time. He's been researching the paranormal long before he got involved with this show. And when he came in the early days, Matt, you were very much about the scientific method, and you were very much about trying to apply that to what it was that we were doing. And somewhere along the way, you've realized it's not working.
No, I realized that doing it, I can do it for myself. But what I don't like or didn't like, or how do I put this? What I find disconcerting in terms of doing things in a scientific principle is nobody's doing it in a standardized manner.
Right.
While looking into the paranormal, everything's going, which is fine. It's good to have various points of data, but everybody's got to start off on the same page, and that's how science works. It's dogmatic. It's in some cases boring, but you have to cover all of those bases, and right now we've got people going off in every which direction.
Right, of course. Jeff, can we all start looking at this from the same foot? I don't think that that's possible, because everybody's going to internalize the experience differently.
Right. So when I say that the paranormal is not amenable to the scientific method, that is no slight on the scientific method. I have profound respect and even reverence for science. But because I have respect and reverence for science, I know what is not scientific, and I also know what cannot be known through the scientific method. I mean, I work with scientists all the time. I know how science works quite well. And so the reason the paranormal is not amenable to the scientific method is it's all about human beings. It's all about individual subjects and whatever it is they need at a particular point in their life cycle. And often these events intervene within trauma or illness or danger or at some transition point in the life, and they're clearly designed to kind of send a message. They're about, in the language of the humanities, they're semiotic. They're about meaning. They work like text. They work like novels or films. They don't work like machines or mechanisms or causal systems. They work more like movies or novels. So if you talk to people who have had these experiences, they'll often say to you, "Wow, it was like I was caught in a novel, or I was a character in a movie," and of course they were, because that's what these things are about. They're telling us stories, and we don't understand what the stories are because we're the characters in the stories. We're the characters up on the screen, and so that's what I'm trying to say in this book is that, look, we can understand this, but we've got to use different methods, and we've got to think about these things more like novels or films or stories.